All right. Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to today's class. We have a fun class today with Peg, who is going to be covering what's in bloom at the store right now and really showing a highlight, I believe, of some of our flowers and some containers and talking about the care of some of those plants. So definitely looking forward to this. For those of you who are new to our programs, welcome. And for those of you who have been to all of our classes or some of our classes before, just bear with me as always for the next minute or so. For everybody who is new, this is a Zoom webinar. It's not a Zoom meeting. So we can't see you or hear you during this class. So if you have questions during the class, you're going to submit them through that Q&A box on your Zoom menu. Click on that, type your question in, and I will see that and relay it to Peg when she is taking questions. And I know we're jam-packed today. I believe Peg has a pretty full class planned today. So we'll see how many questions we get to. If we can't get to questions or we don't answer everybody's, you can always follow up with us after the class. I'll explain how to do that later. And we are recording today. So if you want to watch the class again afterwards, or if you have to leave early, we'll be sending the recording out tomorrow, as well as a list of the plants that Peg discusses today. So we'll be doing all of that. And I think that about covers it. If anybody has questions during the class, just send me a note. And I'll just do a quick introduction of Peg, who I know for many of you needs no introduction. She's been with Merrifield for many years, and she maintains her own garden, which has evolved also over many years, draws on all of that experience to share with us. She works in the annual section for the most part at our Fair Oaks store, and she's one of our designers and has been teaching classes for us for a long time and used to do our gardening advisor TV show. So she has a lot of experience, and I'm happy as always that she is with us. So Peg, I will let you get started.
Thank you, Missy, and welcome to all of you this afternoon. Yes, I have been here for a very long time, but you know, and I love sharing whatever I've learned along the way. And the beauty of it is I learn something new every day, okay? So that's the great part of continuing to grow. So it's July. We've got lots of beautiful things in bloom. Grab your hat, grab your gloves. Yes, they are box gloves. If you've never used them, you really, really should. They are fantastic. Wonderful grip. And I love to feel things, but I don't like my hands in the dirt all the time, okay? So we have a lot of color going on right now in the garden, in containers, and used in many different ways. So I'm only going to be able to skim the surface, but let's start, Danny, with some that are primarily out in the garden, and some that you would use and reach for right away, and some that you might not. And this is one of the ones that you might not know so well. And it's Abelia, A-B-E-L-I-A, Abelia, and it's a variegated form of Abelia. And because I have a large area and it's very informal, I have let this go with minimal pruning, and I absolutely love it. And it's probably 6 feet tall. If you needed something smaller, there are varieties that would be smaller, but they also, with once a year pruning, could be kept to 4 feet easily. I like the relaxed. It's certainly not pruned into a little round ball because Abelia doesn't really lend itself to that. So this could grow in full sun or in part shade. And the beauty of Abelia is that it blooms throughout the entire summer season. And I just love it for that. And the hummingbirds love it too. And in the next photo is one that we really sell a lot of. And the market is flooded with some absolutely gorgeous new varieties. This is one of the Mop Heads. No need to name varieties because the best thing to do is to come in and look them over. And they're in bloom right now, and so it's very easy to make your selection on that. Now, I want to share with you again in the ground plantings, okay? And so then you will bring up the next one. This, because I so frequently am filming in my own garden, but this is a delightful little area that is planted out in our front garden beds here at the Fair Oaks location. I put these in early last year, so this is second year for them, and I've been really pleased at the continuity of bloom with this limited space. And I'm going to say that it's at least 20 feet deep and maybe 30 feet long. So there's a fair number of plants in there and some repetition in the and some contrast of textures. But this was just taken within the last couple of days. And so there is a lot in bloom right now. There is in the front an ornamental grass and a favorite of mine. It's called Muhlenbergia, Muhlenbergia, or it's frequently called pink mullygrass. Now, at the moment, it's just a low mounding form, but it will shoot up these absolutely beautiful sprays of pink inflorescence, which will last for a long time and complement those plants that are around it. There is some repetition of that plant within the bed. There's probably 5 within that entire section of bed. Showing directly behind the grass, the golden color is one of my favorite, what I call H plants. It's Heliopsis, Heliopsis. And it's, no, I'm sorry. I've got the wrong name on there. It's Heliopsis, okay? And it blooms for a long period of time. Again, if you go in and deadhead, once a bloom is finished and is no longer attractive, follow it down to the first nice set of leaves and clip it off, because then it will form more buds just below that and continue to bloom over a longer period of time. There is a plant that you can see that's slightly purple, and that's called Perovskia, Perovskia, and it is a very long blooming plant also. You might deadhead a little bit on this. I normally don't deadhead very much at my own home. So you've got some nice interest in color there. And in the very background, there's another hydrangea. It's one of the Pinnacle Hydrangeas. It's different, and often they're white and then sometimes turn a very rosy color later on. And a little difficult for you to see, perhaps, but between the grass in the front and the Heliopsis, the yellow one in the center, there is a plant that I am very fond of, and that's called Geranium Roseanne, Rosanne, Roseanne. It's a leggy sort of geranium, perennial geranium that kind of winds itself into other plants, and it's very complementary with the color pickup of the Perovskia. So you've got a flow of color going on there. And there's also a Nepeta, which is a repeat bloomer if you deadhead the old ones, and will bloom throughout the summer. So let's do the next one and go through this bed. This is a little closer view of another section of that. You can see this is second year for that Pinnacle Hydrangea, and it's a greenish white right now. It will get more white with time and then turn a little pinkish as it ages. So it's very attractive. And you can see again in the background the purple Perovskia, but in the center of this is another beautiful yellow flower that is Rudbeckia hirta, Hirta. That one is not a true perennial, but it usually comes back for me and will seed very well, depending upon how heavily you mulch in the spring. It's also called Gloriosa Daisy. And you will also see a reddish echinacea, Echinacea. And in the next picture, a close-up of that one. This is Sombrero, and it's really a lovely, lovely echinacea. I have a lot of these in my garden. Most of mine are the old traditional pink ones, and they seed nicely too. And I like to keep them going when some of the blossoms get really old. I like to deadhead again, going down to the first true leaves and clipping it there so that it will come out just below that with fresh stems and buds. And it should bloom beautifully right into September. But in September, I stop deadheading because the finches and the birds absolutely love the seed heads as they form. Plus, as they're eating these seeds and scattering them, I get babies from that, which I don't mind at all. I love self-seeding things when they're not obnoxious, okay? And this one is not, okay? Finishing up on that particular bed, because these are all perennials. Perennials that have long periods of bloom. The ornamental grasses are wonderful contrasts for all of the others. And this is an absolute favorite of mine, Molinia again, M-O-L-E-N-I-A. And it's Sky Racer. And it throws up these really tall inflorescences because they're not true blooms, they're called inflorescences. And the beauty of it is it's very see-through. So you could actually have it even in the middle of a border and it works well, or in a small space. Now, if you only have a small space, if it is not as big as what I described, then you might have to pare down just a little bit, use fewer plants perhaps, but with some repetition, because if you just have one of everything, it's not always as pleasing as you would like it to be. But we're all very concerned about the pollinator gardens and giving these pollinators ample food to do their job. And this would be a good pollinator garden.
Okay, can you repeat the name of that plant?
That particular one?
This grass in the
Molinia, M-O-L-E-N-I-A, Molinia Sky Racer.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, let's leave the in-ground planting for a few minutes. There's a lot of shrubs that are still in bloom in the summer, and there's a lot of perennials in bloom. I've just skimmed the surface there, but let's go to containers. Now, we are going into my garden, and yes, I have far more containers than one really should have, but there's reasons for that. It's a learning curve always. There's always new varieties. And while I cannot trial all of them, I do like to trial as many as I can. And this is my patio that is below the deck, and we use it a lot for sitting. It's the use of containers to complement the borders. Some of these containers are actually staged within the borders to give additional color, because I have on this side of the patio morning sun, pretty much full morning sun. My hosta grow beautifully, my ferns grow beautifully, the Hacanacloa that you see in containers in the background, the ornamental grass grows beautifully, but there's not a lot of color there, except within the plant material, which is a big advantage when you're dealing with shade. And so I add these containers. And On the other side, which I'm not showing you right now, it gets afternoon sun. And that's where I grow all of my herbs in containers, and also those annuals that require more sunshine. So let's take again a closer look at some of the plants that are within that space where it gets full morning sun. This is New Guinea Impatiens. It happens to be a variegated leaf, which is additional color. And I love that hot red. You know, I really do enjoy that color. It will also grow geraniums well, and you don't see it quite as much over in my left-hand side. But it's a color pickup with that, because it's centennial. I think it's centennial. Okay, can't see it terribly well. And then this is staged partly within that bed, and there is the grass Hakanakaloa. There's a number of other things that's actually planted in that bed, but these containers are complementing it. Sitting higher up in an attractive container within the bed is a potted Caladium with impatiens coming out of it. And in front of that is Dusty Miller. Dusty Miller is great, and it actually often becomes a perennial, but we treat it as an annual most of the time. Gray is very complementary to the other colors and really modifies some of it. So I do enjoy using gray. And then there is a repetition again with the Caladiums. Caladiums aren't grown for their bloom, but when you're dealing with shade, and actually a lot of shade, much more than I have here, the Caladiums will thrive and give you color even though it's not blossoms. Okay, let's do the next one. Okay, this is on my deck, and this was something new that I tried. Okay, it is Selenia Begumia, which will take a lot of sun, and this gets absolute full morning sun. But it also has Rex Begonia in it. And I'm going to bring up, if we come back to me, honey, I'm going to bring up some of that for some suggestions, because oftentimes we don't use some of these, what we think of as house plants. Okay, this is called Shadow King. It's a lemony color. So let's sit that right there. And then let's bring up Creeping Jenny, which is Lysimachia, which would fall out of the container. That Thriller. Okay, now let me see. This one is actually the one that is in that particular one. It's called Black Magic, and I love that color. But look what happens when you mix it with some of that golden color there. Now, what else can we put in here? Let's see. I think that we will do this one. That'll work. Okay, this is one way of forming some of those combinations, and perhaps using sometimes plants that you might not normally use. But the beauty of it is also that these particular begonias make incredible houseplants. So at the end of the season, you can lift them out of your containers and bring them inside. So that's a good thing. So we've got that nice chartreusey yellow that really makes that dark foliage pop. So all of this is available and underused. I love this particular one. Again, it's a Rex Begonia. Beautiful, beautiful foliage, isn't it? And while you may or may not want it with the variegated foliage here, although I don't object to that, then you could try something different, okay? Maybe you could use a pentas in there. You need to play with these things and try to do something that is just a little bit different. Okay, I'm going to lay these down, get them out of the way. Alrighty. Let's go to the next picture, Danny. Now, this is another grouping of containers. This is in my front. It's above a wall, and it's placed so that I can sit on my front porch and have my cup of coffee in the morning and watch the pollinators, particularly to watch the hummingbird that visits this frequently. And it's planted particularly for pollinators, all kinds of pollinators. Also, it's kind of planted for my pleasure too, because I love what's in it, but it's a little different. And there are a number of containers there that have salvia in them. And I'll show you that in a moment. They have salvia, different kinds. There's some new ones on the market that are fantastic. There's pentas, needs only slight deadheading to keep it going all summer. There's Gartenmeister Fuchsia, which they absolutely love. It's a beautiful funnel type flower that's perfect for the hummingbirds. There is lantana. There's Angelonia. There are Petunias. And come back to me for a minute and let me show you some of these. This is the Gartenmeister Fuchsia, and it blooms all season. And when this elongates and it's almost finished, every now and then you can clip it back to those first leaves there, and it will form more and keep going and going and going. So that Gartenmeister Fuchsia is there, and it's wonderful. It also has pentas. I happen to have the red one, but this pink one is beautiful. And again, it may need slight deadheading now and then. You'll know when that is. And you'll simply clip it with your, hopefully, George Chins. You'll simply clip it back like this. So that, well, here's one. Here's one that needs deadheading. Let's get in here. And I'm going to just go in and clip that like so. Get rid of all of that. And then it's going to come out just behind that. So a little deadheading is all that is required to keep these things in bloom. Now, you cannot beat these. And this is also in those containers. This is not the showiest blossom at a distance, but the hummingbirds absolutely love it, and they can hardly keep it in stock. It's vermilion air, okay? So Cuphea, C-U-P-H-E-A, Cuphea vermillionaire, V-E-R-M-I-L-L-I-O-N-A-I-R-E. That's a mouthful. Cuphea vermillionaire. It's wonderful. Lantana is a foremost plant for pollinators. Believe me, it's wonderful. The bees absolutely love it. And there are lots and lots of different colors with this. I love this as a mix. Maybe not with this pink, but this is a good mix coming up here in those. Now, I mentioned also that there's some new salvia on the market. These get really large. This one is called Purple and Bloom. And it's actually one of the first things that hummingbird goes for. This gets 2.5, maybe 3 feet tall sometimes. And sometimes this is perennial, not necessarily in containers, but in the ground. A lot of these things are beautiful planted in the ground as well. This particularly with the lantana, is a beautiful in-ground thing. If you've got small spaces that you need to fill and you really want to have things for the pollinators, here is another absolutely gorgeous salvia. It isn't new, but I think it's underused because a lot of people don't know it. It's Salvia Mystic Spires. Salvia Mystic Spires. And it blooms all summer. Again, with those joyous chins, you come down with that stem once it's finished and clip it right there. And then you've got all these side shoots coming up. When this one's finished, you'll clip it here and it'll send side shoots up through here. Again, another one that mixes really well with all these that I'm bringing up. What else have I got? Ooh, one of our favorites. It's not the first thing they go to, but they definitely go to it, is Angelonia. And you can see that it's blooming as it goes up this little spire here. And so these have actually finished blooming. And when it goes all the way up to the top, I will frequently come back and there's little new shoots starting in here. If you can see those little shoots, if you clip it just above that, those will soon come out and produce more spires. So that's the essential part of what we call deadheading, okay? You know, I didn't show you perennial wise, and this is not in those pots. This is in the ground in that garden here at Fair Oaks. But this is a much underused plant. There's some wonderful new varieties in this one. It is perennial. Penstemon, P-E-N-S-T-E-M-O-N. But it's a different one. It's called Cherry Sparks, but there are others that are similar. And look at that wonderful tubular flower that the hummingbirds particularly love, okay? Love that plant. I'm sorry I missed it. And then there is back here a Shasta Daisy that is long blooming, is perennial, okay? All right, we showed you all of those. Let's see what's coming up next, Danny. Okay, after this is within that, just some fun pictures. This is a Fuchsia Gartenmeister and Angelonia. And at the base of that, there's Petunias and Calabracoa and the spillers flowing out of that, so that it's very interesting. And then the next one is another close-up of the fuchsia with the petunias. There's so many beautiful, beautiful petunias out there. Some require deadheading and some don't. Usually the super petunias and the serfinias don't set seed because they're sterile. And the others require a little bit of deadheading now and then to keep them going. I did not mention, and I would like to before we leave this, that there are some wonderful ones that tolerate a lot of shade too, and in ground or in containers. These have been kind of close out on the shelf, so they're a little elongated. You can cut them back some every now and then to keep them lower, but this just blooms continuously, even in a lot of shade. And it mixes really well with fern and in foliage like Caladiums and Colocasia. But I love the blossoms on this. And when this main blossom is finished, again, if you deadhead down here, it just keeps going. So there is a lot of things in bloom right now. Everybody needs a sunflower, right? Love those. Sunflowers are just such happy, happy plants. I didn't mention, though, that color isn't necessarily always in flowers. And this accepts an awful lot of shade, although there are those that accept full sun, and that is Coleus, C-O-L-E-U-S, Coleus. They're really fun with some of these things. Look, even with the fuchsia is attractive. Now, it is important to talk about taking care of some of these things. I brought up, excuse me if I go off the stage. I brought up another absolutely favorite annual. This is an annual that really loves heat. In fact, in the early spring, you don't want to put this one out too soon. It's like Caladiums. It's very cool weather sensitive. But when the heat comes on, you cannot beat Vinca, V-I-N-C-A, Vinca annual. And this is an absolutely beautiful hanging basket. It's the cascading of Vinca. There's the upright varieties and there's the cascading varieties. And it's in a 10-inch hanging basket. Okay, let's talk about that. It's absolutely beautiful right now. You want to keep it beautiful for as long as possible. It's difficult in a 10-inch basket. You really have to be very watchful. If it's in a hot situation, you might have to water this basket twice a day. So what can you do to improve that situation? Well, it requires a little bit more of an investment, but in the long haul, this is something that you would use year after year, and it's very attractive. I would trade that up, and it's very easy to do. Out of that 10-inch container, either into a 12-inch, or this is actually a 14-inch. But it's a beautiful basket. Now, you'd have to consider this is going to be much heavier, whether your hook or whatever you're hanging it on will tolerate that much weight. So you might need to trade down to more of the 12-inch if you are concerned about the weight. All right, when you buy these, they're lined with this fabric type thing here. What I did because it drains the cocoa liner, it drains so fast that it drains almost too fast. And so we sell here, at least, the 1-yard sections of landscape fabric. And I have taken a piece of that and I'm going to put that in the bottom. This will keep it from draining. It will drain well, but it will keep it from draining too fast, okay? It will hold the water a little better, okay? Then I will put a good potting mix, either a Merrifield mix. I'm hung up on Fox Farm. And because I like the mixture. And so you would put some of that in the bottom, and then you would slip these. I don't think I can do that really well up here. Why don't you take those off for a minute while we continue to talk about this? Well, yeah, you have to reach down inside, and they have little clips, because I think it would be beneficial to show. Okay, I will show you in a moment when Danny gets those off. And I think even if I make a mess, it's worth it. There's the ease of taking care of it when you do this. It's easier with watering and so forth. But there's more to it than that. When you take it home, you're watering frequently. Even in the larger ones, you're going to water every day or every other day, depending upon how much sun it gets. And so you're washing the nutrients out of that container constantly in the hanging baskets and also in the containers. When I pot up my baskets, and pot up my containers. I love this organic plantain. It is all organic and it is very slow release, okay? So I like to mix it in the soil as I'm planting, and I will mix it in this as I am planting. Then you need to fertilize additionally because that will give out at some point in the game. And the ease of using this plant booster, Jax, there's so many different fertilizers and they all work if you use them appropriately. But this is just very easy. It's a liquid feed, and if you do it once a week, it's fantastic. And these plants will thrive, okay? And even every 2 weeks, but once a week is good, okay? Let me see if I can reach over for this and give you, I did not bring up any potting soil, so I cannot show you that, but this is how easy it is to do that. You just pop it out. Well, look what happens here. You've got a lot of roots in there. I don't want to tear this up at all because it's too mature, but I want to loosen just a few of those, just a little bit. Okay. Now you will have put some soil in here. And then you can ease that down in and lift the sides and put more soil in there. Look how much more soil is in that container now. And if you water it appropriately, possibly every 2 days now in this size, if it's 12-inch, possibly every day. But if you do that, this plant will go until frost kills it. So really, I mean, you made an investment in your hanging baskets, which is wonderful, but make a little greater investment because you can do this every year. And then when you buy your hanging baskets here, you can put them in that really attractive thing. It's great. It's the easiest way to take care of your plants. Okay, need to talk a little bit about taking care of the next plant, which is the next one. There we go. I am very fond of lavender, and we have a lot of different varieties of lavender that are just great. And mine is just now going out of bloom, and it has been in bloom since May, early May. With different varieties, bloom at different times. This is in the ground, and it's actually a planting that I have done specifically as a pollinator garden. Not a designed garden. I depend a great deal on reseeding within this. I have fennel that reseeds. I have reseeding larkspur, poppies, Rebecca herda. There are many, many things that I have in here that reseed, plus some perennials. Okay, and you're seeing the Gloriosa daisies, the Rebecca herda behind that. Plus, you're also seeing perennial, the pink echinacea. That's a small grouping because it's actually seedlings from my bigger groupings. But in front of that, because this is a steep hill next to a retention pond. So at the top, because lavender absolutely requires excellent drainage, particularly in the winter, but drainage in general, I have grown this lavender very successfully, and I really do enjoy it. But it is imperative that you not mulch heavily around it. This is mulched with small gravel, okay? I do not put a lot of things around it, and I give it air to breathe. It's in front of these other plants. Now, I have already begun to go out and trim that plant back. You need to remove all the spent blossoms from right now And I do that by just lightly pruning the tippy tops of the green of the lavender, because that will cause it to branch out more, and then it will rebloom in the fall. Now, what am I doing with the spent blossoms? I'm saving some of them because they make great sachets. And it's amazing. You give a little gift with a little sachet, and it's kind of fun. So if you love lavender, find the appropriate place for it. It likes as much sun as it can get. This one gets at least 7 hours of direct afternoon sun, and it is thriving, but it requires care. It requires excellent drainage, and it requires some pruning. Just prune it back below the blossoms, and that's what you need to do. Don't cut into old wood. All right, Danny, let's save the next picture for as we go going off a little bit. Okay, let me talk to you a little bit about some of the issues as far as gardening is concerned. At least they are issues for me. Unfortunately, there are mosquitoes and there are ticks, various ticks, and we have to prepare ourselves for that. In addition to wearing the hat for the sun situation, wearing the gloves to take care of yourself. Oh, and while I'm talking about repellents, we have a new one. I just discovered these the other day. And it's local. Well, it's Virginia made anyway, further down in the state. But there's an interesting story behind this. It's an all-natural moisturizing insect repellent made with lemongrass, which is a good repellent. And then there's also a body lotion, which is wonderful to put on your hands and then put these gloves on and going outside. And the lemongrass is a good repellent for a lot of people. It doesn't work totally for me. I like to put it on my skin because I have to use DEET. I do not put DEET on my skin. I wear long pants when I'm out in the garden, and I spray all my clothes with DEET. And then I spray my hat with DEET. That is very helpful. In any other places, the natural oils work. My daughter is very into doTERRA essential oils, and there are some wonderful repellents in that. And lemongrass is often a mixture in a lot of the repellents that she uses. So this is very helpful as far as keeping yourself from being bitten or keeping ticks away. But Danny, right on the corner next to you, honey, hand me the mosquito bits. This is something that I utilize in my garden, large or small, to help with the mosquitoes and to make it more comfortable outside. They're mosquito dunks and they're mosquito bits. It's actually the bits that I use most often, and I really enjoy putting out attractive containers with water in them. I wish I had taken a picture of one of those because I've got a water plant in a couple of them. But I put these mosquito bits in that water, and when the mosquitoes lay in the water, and they will, this kills the larvae. It is all natural. It will not hurt the birds, the bees, the butterflies, or the babies, okay, or the doggies. Mosquito bits. I utilize this in a number of places within the garden as traps. If you have a larger in there container, then the dunks are fine, but they're too big for all the containers that I have, so I use these. Now, in addition to those helpful things, I have a large back deck and a large outer patio that my wonderful large family enjoys. I also put fans up. They don't like moving air, so the deck is large, and when I've got a large group out there, I'll have a fan on both sides, and then the mosquitoes really leave you alone, okay? So that's all good. And if you have, as I do, a waterfall going into a pond, they don't like moving water, so I don't have to worry about mosquitoes in that. But I find those mosquito dunks just fantastic. All right, you're going out into the garden. I always have to touch on tools because they're my favorites, and there's some that I always talk about, which my Velcro pruners and my joist chins and my wonderful long made in the USA trial Wilcox All Pro. But I don't mention very often, and this has been laying in the front. I'm glad we could get you on the knees. Have you ever used a small shovel? Most of them are quite large, okay? And I, many years ago, dubbed this my ladies' shovel. But it isn't restricted to ladies at all, because I rapidly discovered that a lot of our crew chiefs put one in their tube area because they loved it. This is it's just a wonderful tube because it's long. I have to step on the edges to get it down in, but it will open up a small space if you are particularly planting something like this little 4-inch, 6-inch pot. You can go in and disturb the soil only in that space and put that in. So I actually use this lady shovel more than I use the really big one. So tools are very important, and taking care of them are very important. And lastly, of course, we have the deer, and that's an aggravation. And we all have that aggravation. I was just talking with James, who was so annoyed because they were eating his daylilies. And you wait, and you're anxiously waiting for all these beautiful blooms, and you go out one morning and they've just eaten the beautiful buds. So you have to be diligent when these buds are coming up, daylilies particularly, but also the oriental lilies. I would have nothing like that in my garden if I didn't use this Bobex deer repellent. And there's one, and we were comparing them, that also repels rabbits, and there's very little difference in them. So I'm sure that this probably would too. I don't have a rabbit problem because they're fox that come through frequently, and I'm quite fond of the fox actually because they help get rid of some of the varmints. And I think I have a wildlife refuge at my place. There's no doubt about that. But the Bobex is fantastic. I know there are a couple of others down there too that people use and say that they work quite well, but I have stuck with this and has worked for me. A rain doesn't wash it off, but when you get a gully washer like we had the other night, yeah, I'll go out and spray again soon, okay? But once the foliage has hardened, then you might only have to spray once a month. But as long as it gets that new growth. Oh, and the hosta blossoms, they love those too. I don't know. And if I miss one, you'd think if I sprayed all these around it, they'd leave that one alone. But if I miss that one, they eat it. I don't understand. Whatever. Okay, one quick little picture, and then we'll take just a few questions at that. Okay, this is Clara and little Lydia, and they're growing, and they're picking snap peas. This is up in New York, actually, with another of their great grandmothers who loves to garden. So she has the little girlies out harvesting, and I think it's wonderful. She has given Clara a little bucket, hands-free thing that's hanging around her neck so that she can pick the peas and put them into the bucket hands-free. I thought that was very clever, but I think she's also been eating quite a few of them as she goes along, and so has little Lydia. So wherever you possibly can, enjoy gardening with the little ones outside or bigger ones outside. In other words, introduce these young people to gardening and wildlife and all the natural things of the world. All right, do we have any questions today?
We absolutely do have questions. I will get started, and for everybody who has attended these classes, you guys know you're always welcome to send an email to us if you don't get your question answered, because we don't have time. So if you're new, just know if we don't get to you, just feel free to follow up. You can hit reply on your confirmation email that comes to me, and I'll make sure Peg gets it so she can follow up with you. Okay, Peg, the first question is back to the caladiums.
Yes.
Do those grow in part shade, or about how much sun do they need each day?
Well, they will grow in quite a lot of shade, okay? And they will tolerate a fair amount of sun. But if they are grown with a fair amount of sun, they will require a lot of water. So the best place for a caladium is in full morning sun and sheltered somewhat from the hot afternoon sun. But they'll take a lot of shade, and this is one reason they're so valuable, is they give you color and foliage in the shade.
Yeah, mine are great. I know mine do that for me. All righty, let's see. Next question. This person has rabbits that are eating their Rudbeckia. Did you say that there's a Bobex?
Yes, that specifically says for rabbits. So
okay,
give it a try.
So maybe try that. All right.
Other than that, you can use some of that netting sometimes, but that's an aggravation, you know.
Yeah.
Can be used.
Next question. Do you deadhead the Penstemon?
Yes, you can do that. I just so enjoyed that plant because I had not planted these varieties of Penstemon. I have many other types of Penstemon, but this one has been so rewarding. And periodically you do need to deadhead, not frequently. I love this plant, and it came back beautifully.
Okay, let's see. Next, the red flowered plant for the person asking, that's the Penstemon that Peg's holding now.
Yeah, the Penstemon, beautiful.
Yeah, I love that plant. Okay, here's a bit of we've had a few people ask this, and I know this can be a challenging question if it can really be answered. Which of these plants do deer like the least? Are there any for shade that are generally safe? So I know like different people give different answers to
well, this one will only tolerate some shade. They don't like the salvias. Okay. They do not like the salvias. They do not like the vinca, but we're not talking about shade plants here, okay? They do not like, where'd he go? Well, they haven't eaten my Pintus. Oh, they absolutely will not eat lantana. There are very few shade plants that they won't nibble on. They love the begonias. They really do. Now, they haven't eaten my caladiums. A little bit. You know, it's really hard to find something in the shade that they won't eat.
They'll nibble a lot of it. Okay. So maybe the Bobex is the way to go if you need some shade.
Try it, you know. It smells bad for maybe 12, 24 hours. After that, it dissipates and you don't smell it anymore.
Okay.
You need a shower after you do it.
Yeah, I can imagine. All righty, next question. I should know this, but I don't. Is Gartenmeister Fuchsia, is that an annual?
Yes, it is.
Okay, yes. See, I was like, I thought it was an annual, but I wasn't sure. I knew I should know, but wanted to check. Okay, the Pentus. Does that have a preference for morning sun, or can that handle afternoon sun, full sun?
It can take full sun.
Okay.
Yes,
good.
But it should thrive even if it got full morning sun.
Okay.
But it likes sunshine.
Okay, good. Do you have any tips for trimming the lantana?
You would deadhead similarly to how I described. Where did I put that in? Here it is. Okay. All right. Yes, I'm glad you asked that question because it's a little different. After this, it forms a little seed head, and it will eventually have little dark berries on it, which, by the way, are poison. Okay. There are a couple of varieties, I can't name them right now, but there are a couple of varieties that are sterile and don't set that. So you want to keep this plant blooming, but if you've got small children, you want to put it where they're not going to get to it, okay? But come back. This is the seed head, and snip there, and then here's another one. You snip right there. And here's one here. I'm snipping back to that. I don't know if you can see this carefully or not, but there is a little new growth coming right here that's going to be the next bloom. So you don't want to clip that. Okay, just leave that. Okay, and then continue. Once a week is adequate.
Okay.
And that helps it. It's not an absolute necessity. It will continue to bloom because it's a very hardy plant, but it will bloom more even if you do that.
Okay. Okay. All right. This is a question I've not seen before, and I'm wondering if you have an answer for it. This person is having an issue with the fertilizer from their containers stating the patio flagstone when they refresh it. So they're fertilizing their plants every other week, and then it's staining their flagstone. Have you heard of this before or seen it? Do you have any ideas what to do?
You know, I haven't had that happen.
Okay.
I wonder what kind of fertilizer she's using.
I'm wondering maybe you're welcome. Okay, let's see. This person's welcome to send it to us. If not, send me an email and we'll see if we can follow up with you. Someone might know.
But it would be very nice if we knew what it was.
Yeah, what the fertilizer type is. Yeah.
Because none of this booster has caused any problem for me. And I have a deck and I have patio stuff too. This Jack's Classics, I've never had them stain.
Had an issue with it.
And I don't have any staining when I use the natural Plantain. And those are pretty much the products that I use. But it would be interesting to know what product is staining for her.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, please feel free to follow up with us on that. We'll see if we can get any information for you once we know what the fertilizer is.
Now, when you have, particularly on a deck, wooden or otherwise, when I'm doing containers, I always like to have them at least on pot feet or on those little things that move around. In other words, I want air moving underneath those containers. I don't want them to sit directly. I did that in earlier years. It's a big mistake because it can mess up your deck if it's wood or otherwise.
Yeah.
So you want to never sit that pot directly.
Oh, that's interesting. He's using Jack's Blossom Booster and the pots are on feet. Okay.
Really? Really?
Maybe send us an email and we'll see if maybe a member of the plant clinic has an idea if they've heard of this before, because they hear a lot there.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. But I haven't had that problem.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, feel free to send us. We'll see if we've got anybody at the plant clinic who's seen that issue. Okay. Next question. What was the specific name of the lavender that you grow?
I grow several.
Okay. So, okay. Yeah.
I grow several. There's two low growing ones, and they are usually the earliest that come into bloom. Munstead is one of those that I grow that's low. There are several of the taller ones, Provence, Grosso, and the new one, Phenomenal. And they bloom at slightly different times, but Grosso, Provence, and Phenomenal are much larger. Okay. Hidcote and Munstead are low growing.
Okay.
I grow all of them. They're intermingled.
All right, let's see. We just have a couple questions left. Oh, this is a good question too. Do deer eat the actual fruit like apples or pears without actually touching the foliage?
They absolutely will.
Yeah, they like the fruit.
Yeah.
I just always had issues with squirrels taking 2 bites out of my tomatoes and then dropping them. So that was always my problem.
Well, and squirrels will do that also.
Very
You
angry.
you almost have to net those.
Just
In fact,
nibble your
have-
vegetables and then dump them on the ground, half eaten.
I have a beautiful crop of figs this year, which is within deer fencing, so I don't have to worry about the deer. But I'm going to figure out how to net up to keep the squirrels away, because I would like to have some figs this year. Yeah.
Oh man. All right. We've got just a couple questions left if you're good to keep going. I know we've got another class coming up at 2, but I think we can get through these few. On my blooming lavender, I have dead sections that are black. Do you just, any advice for trimming that off?
Trim it out.
Just
And if your little felcos are not, I mean, if your little Joyce chins are not heavy enough, that's where I have a basket with my favorite tunes in it. And I still am a fan of felco. So sometimes I have to go in there, and oftentimes it's down underneath where it's not getting enough sunshine or air movement. You really, when that's dead and it's dead, you just go in and clip it out. That opens up the plant then for more air to move through anyway. Okay.
All right. Okay, next question. Something is eating this person's echinacea. They don't know what. How do you stop it? I guess if you don't know what it is.
That's very difficult. You know, when David and I were doing the show, I would teasingly say, I'll take care of the beauty. He has to take care of the beast.
So that's a question for David Yost. All right. So if you want to send us a picture of your echinacea or send me a note, I'll get David Yost to take care to see if he can help you with the beast. Peg does beauty. Yeah, he might be able to figure out what it is. Let's see. The plant feed are wonderful, but very expensive. Do you have any advice on substitutes or making our own?
Well, I am not particularly good at telling you how to make your own. I just know it's an investment that you've got forever, you know. Brick, if you've got some brick handy, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, that would probably work.
Most everybody has a few extra brick hanging around.
I don't know. I feel like we always did at my house, but our patio was like kind of falling apart growing up. So there were like random bricks just kind of in our yard. It was not the way it was supposed to be, but that's how it was. So, okay, let's see. Okay, I think these are lavender varieties. Do Hidcote and Munstead have a nice rounded form like you see in magazines?
A rounded form?
Yeah, like a nice, like.
Only if you, well, basically they're a pretty rounded form. And that rounded form comes with how you prune them. And remember I said, when you do prune back the old blooms, you just barely clip into the top so that it stays flush. But if you want it to be nice and rounded, you got to make it nice and rounded.
Okay, so you can sort of shape it to be that way.
That's right.
All right. Okay. Well, that is the last of our questions. So we didn't go too far over there, but we got everybody's questions answered so far. So again, if you want to follow up with us about anything, please just hit reply on that confirmation email. That goes to me. You can attach any photos you want for those of you with problems with critters eating your plants or anything else, and we'll get you answers if we can. Which for most things we can. The fertilizer thing is a mystery, but we'll see who can get that answered for you. Hopefully someone can. I will be sending out an email tomorrow with a coupon, a handout with a list of the plants discussed today. and a link to the recording for this class. So keep an eye out for that. If you're attending by phone, you'll need to actually send me a note. I know I had a couple people ask me about getting emails who I think are on attending just by phone. So just send me an email and let me know who you are so I can send you that information. Peg, is there anything you'd like to wrap up with before we close?
I think I've pretty much covered it. Just gardening it's emotionally fulfilling. And we have so many people come in who just, the color is very uplifting. So give it a try. And by doing some of the fertilizing and taking care and knowing how to water, you won't be frustrated.
That is good. All right. Well, Peg, thank you so much. As always, love when you come on and show us all the beautiful things in bloom. Quick note, which I forgot to mention, we are coming on again at 2, I will be with David Yost at 2 o'clock to discuss hydrangeas in detail, care, different varieties, all that type of stuff. So if you are interested in joining that class, if you can send me an email in the next 10-15 minutes, I should be able to get you the link. You can get signed on, and the signups also on our website. So thank you, Peg, and thank you everybody for joining us for this class. We will see you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.